It's always unreal. I still haven't caught up with my life yet. I know where I was 2.5 years ago to where I am now. It's like, yeah, I still feel like I'm dreaming somehow.
Lamonte McIntyre spent 23 years in prison for a crime he did not do. He was arrested as a teenager, finally freed in his 40s. Lamonte was a prison barber.
I dreamt about that boy for a long time.
A skill which has led to this. He's about to open his own barbershop.
We got cabinets here, and then we got drawers here. Where we at so far, the vision is I can actually see it, and I'm excited about that. I'm very excited about that.
McIntyre has been in prison for 23 years. The KBI continues to investigate. The dirty cop did dirty things.
KCTV 5 has done numerous reports on Lamonte McIntyre. That's because allegations behind his wrongful conviction are so terrible. McIntyre's legal team argued a detective on the case was nothing more than a powerful predator who roamed the streets of KCK. Detective Roger Golubski became a captain, and his partner became the police chief.
I don't know what happened then.
He's got power. I don't got anything. I ain't got nothing.
Lamonte McIntyre's own mother says she was one of the victims. And when she refused to sexually submit any further to Officer Golubski, somehow 3 of her family members ended up in a single police lineup in a double murder. It included 2 of her sons and her nephew. Her son Lamonte McIntyre was convicted of a crime where he didn't even know the victims.
I thank you for this moment.
McIntyre's 23-year fight for freedom.
This is the freedom walk right here.
Became nationwide news. McIntyre's case was featured in the New York Times, where a possible revenge motive by Detective Roger Golubski was laid out.
I'm free, man. That's all the words I got.
Allegations were awful.
It is law.
Kansas passed compensation for wrongfully convicted people.
Yeah, baby. You feel like you're back?
2.5 years later, there are amazing moments.
How you doing?
Lamonte has started his own Innocence Project.
I know the struggle. I know how difficult it is being in that situation, so that's my motivation.
He's building his own business.
We've been planning this for a long time.
There are also heartbreaking realities. Lamonte no longer calls KCK home.
Make it look better.
He'll manage his dream from another state.
I cannot stay away from here. The people supported me. I'm who I am and where I am in life right now because the community of Wyandotte County supported me. So I would never turn my back on Wyandotte County. I just don't want to live here because of circumstances.
Circumstances mean there's never been accountability in his case. It's unclear if former Detective Roger Golubski has ever even been directly questioned by any official agency. News organizations have been told some alleged crimes would be outside the statute of limitations. At other times, we are given a blanket response that they can't answer questions in an open investigation. Remember, 2.5 years have rolled by.
The whole situation needs to be opened up and exposed to sunlight. We're working very hard to shine light in some pretty dark corners right now.
The only visible push for accountability comes from inside this office. McIntyre's legal team continues to investigate allegations of corruption and cover-ups.
You start digging and you just find so many horrific situations. You wonder sometimes how far it extends.
Attorney Cheryl Pilot says she doesn't believe Lamonte McIntyre is the only victim.
What we've seen there is a really twisted form of policing where misconduct in some instances has been particularly egregious. And the most vulnerable and powerless have been both abused and exploited.
Pilot is quick to point out she doesn't believe all officers are corrupt. In fact, officers have cooperated with her investigation. KCTV5 has repeatedly reached out to former Detective Roger Golubski. We stopped by his home this week. His car was in the driveway, but he did not answer his door. He declines to answer any of our questions. KCK has never forgotten this case. It haunts this community, and it haunts Lamonte McIntyre.
I can just get pulled over and they can just take me back. And I have nightmares about this stuff like 3 to 4 times a week. Always going back to prison and without being able to call nobody, without using the phone. And it's the nightmare I have all the time. I go back to prison and I can't remember nobody's phone number.
Lamonte recently packed up and left KCK. It's still home, but it's not where he lives.
Things are still undone. I can't speak on them, but it's a lot of stuff that still need to be addressed. A lot of accountability need to be held and be met. And until that stuff happens, I'm never going to be at peace with that part of my life.
Detective Roger Golubski worked for the Kansas City, Kansas Police Department for 35 years before his retirement. It's unclear how many cases he touched as both an investigator and a supervising captain. In Kansas City, Angie Racono, KCTV5 News. People say enough is enough. Someone needs to investigate former Detective Roger Golubski. He worked here at the Kansas City, Kansas Police Department for more than 35 years. And despite all of the allegations, there has been little formal investigation.
We're now in the time of judgment. Nobody will escape. No one will escape. All wrongs must be accounted for.
Faith leaders and politicians gathered in front of a church to openly release a letter to the KBI.
We step forward asking for justice.
It calls for an investigation into former KCK detective and police captain Roger Golubski. Despite the preponderance of information that has been brought forward, Golubski has not been held accountable.
It's time that you do your job the way we see fit.
Allegations against Roger Golubski have been whispered on the streets of KCK for years. They became public when Lamonte McIntyre's team went to court more than 3 years ago. McIntyre was found innocent.
That's right, buddy.
And released from prison after serving 23 years.
I'm free, man. That's the only words I got, man. I'm happy.
One witness told a judge in all of his years investigating wrongful convictions, Roger Golubski was the dirtiest cop he ever encountered.
This isn't something that I want to run from.
Many people, including Golubski's own partner, called for an investigation into the allegations.
It would warrant a review, somebody to look at it and say, what's going on here?
Today, the KBI sent the following statement. That investigation continues, but to date, we have found no evidence of any violation of Kansas law that is within the statute of limitations. However, during the course of our investigation, information related to possible federal violations was shared with federal authorities for their consideration and possible action.
Roger Golubski and his lawyers consistently declined to comment to me or even return my messages. Some of the allegations are so graphic, it's not appropriate to discuss them at 6 o'clock, so we will have much more tonight at 10. Reporting in KCK, Angie Racono, KCTV5 News.
The FBI is digging into a cold case from 1998. Rhonda Tribune, who also went by Rhonda Easley, was beaten to death. Her body was discovered in a remote area between Edwardsville and KCK. Investigative reporter Angie Racono joins us now live from the scene. So, Angie, very interesting that they're now investigating this case.
It is, and this is where Rhonda's body was found along this stretch of road. She had been badly beaten, and they actually think she was run over by a car. Now, normally, the FBI does not investigate local murders and cold cases. So why this one? Well, we've learned they aren't the only ones interested in what happened out here. So is a local attorney who's been investigating allegations of police corruption.
Roger Golubski is accused of terrible things, including shakedowns and sexually abusing the people he swore to protect. His name first publicly surfaced in the Lamonte McIntyre case. McIntyre spent decades in prison for a double murder he didn't commit.
23 years is a long time. That's a lifetime.
Come on, baby.
His case went to court.
I thank you for this moment.
And he was freed.
This is the freedom walk right here.
McIntyre's own mother accused Golubski of sexual abuse years earlier.
I gotta stop shaking for a minute. Just give me just a minute.
She's not alone. Other women back her allegations in sworn affidavits.
Golubski was so powerful that I didn't think some of us would have felt comfortable saying no or turning down his request for sexual favors.
McIntyre's mother says she refused Golubski's additional advances and even moved away. Years later, 2 of her sons and a nephew were all placed in this police lineup. Roger Golubski's initials are on the back.
There is a great deal of evidence that raises questions.
McIntyre's legal team has called for a wide-ranging investigation, speculating this botched case isn't an isolated incident, and it potentially reveals troubling police practices.
You start digging and you just, find so many horrific situations. You wonder sometimes how far it extends.
Today, that same attorney released this statement to KCTV5. During the course of our investigation of Lamonte McIntyre's case, we learned of the widely known murders of 15 or more women that remain unsolved. These murders came to our attention because Roger Golubski was a homicide detective at the time and because some of the homicides received little or no attention from detectives. As a result, family members in the community remain grieving and burdened with painful questions. We applaud yesterday's announcement by the FBI. As Lamonte's lawyers, we also hope people come forward to provide relevant information on both wrongful convictions and unsolved homicide cases in Kansas City, Kansas. Roger Golubski continually declines to speak with KCTV5 regarding the allegations. He's been the focus of more than a dozen KCTV5 investigative reports.
We demand justice today.
The allegations swirling around him have prompted an outcry from the community. In July, local lawmakers released a letter demanding an investigation, pointing out Golubski has not been held accountable. Golubski served with the KCK Police Department for 35 years. It's unclear how many cases he touched as a detective and police captain. The FBI will not comment if this case is related to Roger Golubski, just that they are taking a look at an old murder. We will keep reporting on this cold case and also Detective Roger Golubski. Reporting in KCK, Angie Racono, KCTV5 News.
An unsolved murder in KCK is back now in the spotlight. The FBI is now investigating the death of Rhonda Tribune. She was beaten to death more than 20 years ago. This case has gotten the attention of our investigative team because the detective on the case was Roger Golubski. He's accused of predatory behavior and sending an innocent man to prison. KCTV5's investigative reporter Angie Racono talked exclusively with Rhonda Tribune's daughter.
This lonely stretch of road is where Rhonda Tribune's body was found. It's on the edge of Edwardsville in KCK. She'd been beaten to death and run over by a car. So many injuries are documented in her autopsy. Who did this? No one has ever been held accountable, and her family wants answers.
What do you know about your mother's murder? What have you been told?
I know that it was a brutal murder and that she was discarded off the side of the road. That she did have DNA under her nails, so she did fight back. Whoever it was, she did fight back. She didn't just die, she fought for her life.
Jaleisha was just 4 years old when it happened.
A lot of heartbreak. Mother Day comes every single year. People come pick up their kids from school. So you're reminded every single day what you're missing out on.
Years rolled by, then decades. Rhonda Tribune became another cold case.
I'm going to be honest with you. I lost hope. I lost hope before.
Now the FBI wants information, but there needs to be a compelling federal reason for them to investigate a local murder.
What is your understanding of why the FBI wants to look at your mother's case?
There's several cases that are particular to the same instance of my mother's case, and that he is the common denominator from all those cases.
The he Jaleisha is talking about is actually the detective who worked her mother's case, Roger Golubski.
They're women, cold cases, brutally murdered, found in the same areas. So he is a target at this point.
There are terrible allegations swirling around Golubski. He's now retired. He was a powerful detective who became a captain.
I don't know what happened then.
His partner became the police chief.
Did you hear of any of these allegations?
There was nothing that I ever learned about him that I was like, ooh, that's not good.
Golubski worked for 35 years inside the Kansas City, Kansas Police Department.
Detective Roger Golubski. Everything heads to court tomorrow. It's unclear how many cases he touched.
KCTV 5 has done more than a dozen reports on him. He's accused of being a predator who roamed the streets and victimized the people he was sworn to protect. He's accused in court records of intentionally botching a double murder and sending an innocent man to prison for 23 years.
It's time that you do your job the way we see fit.
The Lamonte McIntyre case prompted cries for justice and accountability. Golubski has never faced criminal charges. As investigators argued, many accusations are outside the statute of limitations. Golubski refuses to speak publicly about the allegations. We've tried.
Do you believe there are people in KCK out there that have information in your mom's murder?
Absolutely. KCK is a small town. If Kansas City wants to speak up, Kansas City will. Kansas City is small enough for someone to know exactly what happened. We're talking about a woman who was married and who had 6 children. You just don't disappear. You just don't disappear like that.
That was Angie Racono reporting. If you have information about Rhonda's death, the FBI would like to hear from you. Their tip line number is 1-800-CALL-FBI. KCTV 5 will continue looking into Rhonda's case and the accusations surrounding former detective Roger Golubski.